Welcome back. So today we're going to start Microsoft Excel. We'll give everybody a few minutes to join us, but we will still be working with the Office 365 account. We'll just be using Excel instead of Word. All right, so welcome back. As I mentioned yesterday, we are done with most of our Microsoft Word, but we're going to be working today with Excel. So to work with Excel, it's going to be very similar to Microsoft Word. You just log into your Microsoft Office 365, and then we're going to use Excel. So just like Word, you got a couple options here when you want to create a new worksheet. Now, worksheet is what is used for Excel documents, and just general documents is usually what's used for Microsoft Word. So on the left-hand side here, we've got the plus, we've got Word, we've got Excel. So just like Word, there's a couple ways to do it. I can click on this Create button, and you'll see I have Excel Workbook. The other way to do it is click on Excel, and it will bring you up this menu very similar to what we did with Microsoft Word. The difference, though, is now instead of new blank document, we've got new blank workbook. And then on this side over here, there is by the way, a tour. If you want to read Microsoft's suggestions about what you should know about Excel, that's a good way to get started too. And then over here, some templates. So we'll get into those later. But basically, those are worksheets or workbooks that other people have set up that you can use. So for example, there's an invoice if you're going to invoice customers. You'll also find in the templates, there's like a home budget, if you want to create a home budget, and ways to keep track of like mileage. If you're an Uber driver, you need to keep track of your mileage. That's a good way to do it. So lots of useful tools there, and they're mostly free. For us to get started, we're going to do a new blank workbook. So I just click on that. And just like with Word, it loads up fresh new workbook. Well, it's supposed to. There it comes. All right, so here's some good news. A lot of the skills that you picked up in Microsoft Word, you can apply here into Microsoft Excel. That's the good news. The bad news is there's a lot of things that are different about Excel than Word. So there's new things to learn. That's okay, that's what we're here for. One thing that you can do very easily is you can save your workbook. So on the left-hand side or at the top, you will see, just like in Word, it says Excel and then Book Saved. So that gives you an opportunity to create the new name. So it's going to call it My First Excel Workbook. And it's saved. So it's just like Word. So this is a document. Now, I used the term before, worksheet, and now we're also mentioning workbook. The worksheet is what you see here, this work area. That's one sheet. It actually extends further down and further over. We'll see that in just a minute. But down below, you'll see it says sheet 1. You can create more than one sheet. So that's why it's a workbook. The workbook is made up of multiple sheets, or even just a single sheet. So to use it, you'll see we have grids. And across the top, there's some letters. And then on the left-hand side, there's some numbers. So I don't know if you ever played Battleship when you were a kid. You'd put somewhere and they would call out a letter and a number, and that would be the coordinates. So like B6. So you go over here and find, okay, where's B? Oh, there's B. And I go down 6. And where those two intersect, that's B6. And then you either call out hit or miss, or, oh, you sunk my battleship. Well, that's the way this works too. All these boxes are called cells. So right now I am in cell A1. How do I know? I got a little black border around it, and plus A is shaded and 1 is shaded. And in the upper left-hand corner, it tells me I'm in cell A1. So moving around Excel is a lot like moving around Word in that you can click. So if I want to move down one, I can click down to cell A2 and you'll see it moved. Or I can click over to cell B2. You can also use the keyboard. So if you have up and down arrows, you'll see that works too. And in Excel, it's actually kind of handy to have the keys, the arrow keys. So you don't have to, but it does make it a little easier, especially when selecting groups of cells and things. So the advantage to Microsoft Excel is you can tell the computer to what to do with the cells. So here's what we're going to do. Real simple math, just to get started. This is cell A1. I'm going to put in the number 5. So I type 5. You'll see I get it in 2 places. First, in my active cell here with the square around it, but also up here. This is the function bar, but it also shows you the contents of the cell. When I click down below it, it looks like it disappears. But that's because in cell A2, there's nothing. So I clicked on cell A2, and now I'm going to type in 7. And I hit enter. So you'll see now I've got a couple of numbers in my cells. My active cell is A3, because I can see the box and I can see the shading and the A and the 3. I want the computer to add 5 and 7 together. So I'm going to put in what's called a formula. So that's basically it's what makes up an Excel worksheet. Numbers and formulas. And then you get a few labels in once in a while to tell you what the numbers mean. So to add those up, I'm going to type in equal sign. All formulas start off with equal sign. That tells the computer, okay, pay attention. This is going to be a formula. I'm going to type in the first cell, A1, and I'm going to put in the number, or the plus A2. You'll see that as I type, let me zoom in a bit here so you can see it. As I am typing, those cells change colors. And up here in the formula bar, they happen to correspond with the colors of what's being typed. That kind of tells you, okay, this is blue is A1. Oh yeah, that's right. There's blue. That's right. That's A1. That's what I want. Plus A2. Yeah, that's red. There you go. Red. When I hit enter, there's my number. Okay, 12. All right, you might say, oh, big deal. I could have told you that. Sure. But here's the advantage to Excel. You could have a lot of numbers being added up, multiplied, and everything. What happens is sometimes the first number will change. So let's say the first number, I want to change it to 12. I can just type 12 over my 5. When I hit enter, you'll see cell A3 automatically updates. It did the math. So you see, it doesn't really matter what numbers are in here. Cell A3 is going to add them both together. Say in cell A2, I'm going to put in 872 or 3, 21, 768. And there we go. Cell A3 added those 2 together. So that's an advantage with Microsoft Excel. So let's say you had a budget worked out and your monthly movie expense is $100. Well, some new movies come out this month and you want to see them all. So you say, all right, I'm going to increase the movie budget by $50. So you change the 100 to 150, everything else updates. And when you look at the bottom, you can see, can I afford it? And it will tell you, here's how much you have coming in this month, here's how much you're going to spend, and here's how much you should be able to afford. So it makes it very handy to do so. The trick with Excel is it's smart enough to know even when you have, like say, decimals. So I've got 12 in cell A1. In A2, I'm going to say 15.5. And it can do decimals too. So the way this works is as I scroll down, you'll see you've got scroll bars at the bottom and on the right-hand side. As I pull the scroll bar down, you'll see the numbers keep growing. So I didn't lose my math. It's still at the top in cell A1. But the numbers go on and on and on and on. All right. So I'm using the scroll bar on the right-hand side. If you have a Microsoft wheel mouse, you can use the center wheel to navigate this up and down. You can also use the arrow keys, and you can do page down. So I'll go back up to the top. Come back to A1. If I hit the page down button on my keyboard, it takes me down 16 rows at a time. So there's 16, 31, 46, etc. Page up takes me up. The same scroll bars, like one over here, are found in Microsoft Word when you have a long enough document. So they work too. The thing with the scroll bars is they're good for the bigger picture. It'll take you down a whole bunch at a time. When you're trying to fine tune just to one cell, that's when it becomes helpful to use the keyboard. Down at the bottom, I have another scroll bar. And you'll see this way, I can scroll to the right. And you'll see all the letters change. You'll notice I can never go any higher than row 1 or any further left than column A. That's it. That's where it starts. So that's called the home cell. So you can always go back to that, and that's where usually most spreadsheets start. So what those are, when you see A1, B2, C3, those are cell references. So those are the names of the cells, and you can use them to interact with any other cell on the worksheet. So, bring it back up here. If you are working, let's say you're doing 12 months of the year. So I'm going to change all this out here. Type in January, February. So you'll see as I go across, I'm just hitting the tab key to move on to the next column. And there we go. So I've got 12 months. So even though these are names of the month, they're still in a column, column A, column B, column C, etc. And by clicking on the letter, I can select the entire column all the way down. In this case, there's nothing really there, it's all empty, but you get the idea. And I can go further, column M, N, O, P, S, T, W, X, Y, Z. Now you might say, uh-oh, we're out of columns. Actually, there's a lot more. What happens is when you get to the end of the alphabet, it starts over again, but now it's AA, AB, AC, AD. See how that works? So it combines the first letter with each letter up to Z. Run out of letters there or columns there. Now we're BA, BB, and so forth. See how that works? On my keyboard, I'm going to hold the Control key down and push the right arrow. It's going to take me all the way to the end. Now we are all the way to the right. This is column X, F, D. So you can see before it was XFC and then XFB, XFA. So these are the far extreme columns that you can use in Microsoft Excel. It's as far as you go. You can't add any more columns after that. That's a lot though. So I don't know anybody who's ever gotten that far. In fact, if I were doing a worksheet that was, even coming close to doing that, I'd figure, it's probably about time to break up the worksheet because that's just too much for one person to handle at one time. And it's much easier to handle smaller things. All right. So at the top little window here, I do have coordinates. I'm on cell XFD1. If I want to go back, I can hold the control key down and the left arrow. And it will take me back to cell A1. Actually, pardon me, L1, because L1 has content in it. The other thing I can do is hold the control key and then you'll see the home button. Control home always takes you to A1. And there it is. No matter where you are in the worksheet, you want to go home, do control home. The other way to get around is in this box where it's telling me the cell reference, in this case, XFD1, I can type in my cell reference, A1. When I hit enter, it takes me back to cell A1. If I want to go back there, I could type it in here. I type it right. And I'll go there too. So that's another way to jump around a lot. If you know there's a particular cell you want to get to, just type it in the top and it will jump you all the way over. So if you ever get that far, let me know. I'd be curious how anybody could get that far on purpose, maybe by accident. Speaking of extremes, as I mentioned before, we can scroll down. And you see the numbers keep going. So these are the rows. Once again, I can use my keyboard shortcut and I can use the control button. In this case, control down, the down arrow. So when I do, I am now on cell A 1048576 was 1,048,576 rows. And again, this is as far as you can go. You can't go any further down. That's as big as a spreadsheet gets. And once again, I don't know anybody who's gotten there. I'm sure it's possible. And you might do it just to say you've done it. But once again, that would be an extraordinarily large worksheet. And it's probably time to break it up some. Now, is it possible? Sure. Here's how. You'll remember at the top, I put the months of the year. So maybe this is my sales worksheet, right? So I've got sales for each month of the year. The year turns over, so I create another bunch the same way down below. And I use that for a year, and I don't want to erase the old years, so I keep going. And I build up, 20, 30 years worth of data. It could get pretty big. And again, every time you use it, you're probably just using that year's section of the worksheet. However, if you want to be organized, you're probably better off breaking those up into each year, having its own worksheet. Just makes it work a little easier. All right. Well, as you can imagine, if you want to go back home again, you have the same resources when you're working vertically. So I can use the control home button, or I can type in at the top in my cell reference, A1. So let's try it. So I click on my cell reference box here, A1. Oh, by the way, upper lowercase doesn't matter. You can do lowercase, Excel figures it out. Hit enter, and there we go. Back to cell A1. If I use the control down arrow, it takes me all the way to the bottom again. And then this time, control home. Now, what if I did the control down arrow? So now I'm down to 1048576. And while I'm here, I do the control right arrow. Now I am in cell XFD 1048576. This is as far right and as far down as you can get in Microsoft Excel. It can't handle any more rows or any more columns. This is the very last cell. So once again, it's pretty extreme and it gives you lots of room to work with. But we are way away from home. So even though we're as far as home we can be, a control home takes us back. So those are the keyboard equivalents. I don't know if you'd ever have cause to get to that last cell, but if you did, if you use the scroll bar, it would take you a while. If you use the mouse and try to go down further, yeah, it'd take a very long time. So having those arrows is really kind of helpful. So depending on your keyboard, I mean, here are mine. Here's what I'm referring to when I say my arrow keys. I happen to have them here. And then of course there's a control here or a control here, left hand, right hand. Holding the control on one of those arrows makes it jump around. You also see I've got a page up or pig D. That's page up, page down. So that jumps you a section at a time. If you don't have those keys, but you do have a keypad like this over here, you'll see that these keys do have arrows. It's 8, but it's also an arrow. How do you make it do the arrows? Well, just push this little button here. You should have a num lock. Num lock means use numbers. Turn it off, it means use the arrows. And then also gives you home, page up, page down. And that's another way just to get around. So I've noticed some keyboards don't always put in the keypad now. Well, that's too bad because I kind of like it. But once again, you choose the way works best for you. And whatever gets you around. So any questions on our huge Excel worksheet? So now that we've seen the extremes, that's basically what a worksheet does. It adds, subtracts, multiplies numbers. There are lots of formulas. If you want to find the cosine of a number, you can. There's a cosine formula. There's all kinds of formulas. Let's take a look at it. So here's fx. That's not special effects. That means function x. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to see the functions. So these are the different formulas you can use. So if you remember from math classes, the sum adds up numbers together, a whole group of numbers. There's an average. It'll figure out the average. It'll count numbers. It'll do standard deviations. There's a thing called a VLOOKUP and an HLOOKUP, allows you to make lists and refer to the list, and the computer will actually search the lists for you. The way this is set, it's set to most commonly used. All right. So here's what it will do is as you start using different functions, if they're not listed on here and you've used one, it will become your most commonly used functions. So this is really handy when you want to find things you do a lot. I would say, by the way, sum is probably the most commonly used function in Excel, because whenever you have a group of numbers, you always want to add them up. If I use the pick list, you'll see there's some different categories. So for example, there's financial functions. There's date and time, so it'll calculate dates. If you want to know what day of the week you were born on, there's actually a function that you type in the date and it will give you the day of the week. There's math and trigonometry. So if you're working with dealing with some triangles and things, you can calculate using those formula. You can also run statistics. I mentioned the lookups and the references. Those are handy. There's some database functions that you can use, and a lot of people will use Microsoft Excel instead of a database program like Microsoft Access. It works fine to a certain point, but if you're using it for a lot of different features, at some point you're better off converting over to a database because it has a lot more power and it's a little bit easier to manipulate. Anyway, there's also things you can do with text. There's logical statements, like it can tell you if a number is odd or even. You could set up information engineering and cube functions too, or you could look at all. I'm going to click on all. Here's all the functions. The way this works is, as I scroll down here, like here's average. If I click on average, Microsoft will always give you an example of how it's going to look. So in this case, to get the average of something, you're going to use the equal sign. Remember, I said equal sign always precedes functions. So equal sign AVERAGE, and then parentheses, and then put your numbers in or your cell references. Down below, it'll give you an explanation. So this is just kind of a quick reference. If you're using one you're not familiar with, but you know you got to use it, it's a good idea to check on the internet or go through help. These little blurbs are handy, but they don't tell you a whole lot. On the internet, I mean, every function has people who will show you in a video how to use it. But as I scroll down, you'll see there's hundreds of them. So, and some of these are, very powerful. And I think I mentioned the other day, if you can master these here, all these functions, oh, you'd own the world. You could work anywhere, and people are going to need you because most of the times what happens is people learn what they need to learn. So for their job, they may never use the transpose function, but they might use today to always insert today's date and then do math off that, like what's 90 days from today, things like that. Somebody I knew was a pilot, and I got to see the front of the military plane, and it's all these controls you just see wrapped around you. And I said, how in the world can you keep track of all this? And he said, oh, it's easy. And I'm sure it is for him. But he said, like when you're landing, you're really only looking at this section over here. The other stuff, you're coming down, it doesn't matter about going up. And then when you're taking off, this is the section you worry about and things like that. And that's kind of what you're looking at here. There's a lot here, but you'll probably never use most of them. But you will use some of them, and probably an awful lot. So we're going to go through in a class the most commonly used ones, how they work, and we're going to build some spreadsheets out of it. So those are our functions. You'll remember when we were working in Word, we set up a little table, and it was our Microsoft Office classes. We had January, February, March. So I already have this typed. I'm going to copy those. So I'm going to select them by clicking from January and dragging over to March. They turn gray. And then I don't know if you remember me mentioning in Microsoft Word, whenever you copy, it doesn't react. It's hard to tell that it actually copied. In Excel, it does tell you. You'll see I got the dashes. They're walking around my January, February, March cells. Those are called marching ants because they look like little ants. That tells you that's actively copied. I'm going to click down here in cell D7, and I'm going to Control V paste. You also have the tools up here, by the way, but Control V works great. So there's January, February, March. And remember our classes were Microsoft, Word 1, so I have words that are overlapping. Sometimes the columns aren't wide enough. So to change the column width, all I got to do is go between the D and the E. So I want to make column D wider. And if I look here, there's a light gray line between D and E. It's supposed to be a rectangle. See that little gray line? So I can click, when I hover over it, I get 2 lines plus 2 arrows. That tells me I can widen it. Click, drag out, and there we go. I'm going to do the same thing between E and F. And I mistyped Microsoft Word 2. There's supposed to be a space. All right. Just like with Word, we have an alignment tool. I can align those center. And there we go. It looks just like the table in Word. In fact, actually, that's all the table is. The table is kind of a scaled down worksheet. It doesn't have all the formulas, but it does have the grid lines. So you can make a table in Excel. I could take this, copy it, and paste it into that Word document we worked on yesterday, and it would work just fine. It would come in as a table. The opposite is also true. If I ever make a table in Microsoft Word, or somebody sends you something in Word that you want to put into Excel, just copy the table, paste it here, and it will work the same way. Okay, so there are lots of shading. We'll get into those as we go along. You can change the colors of the backgrounds, make it look really nice, and it will work, like I said, very similarly to Microsoft Word. Speaking of Microsoft Word, I mentioned when we started that Microsoft Word defaults with the font of Calibri 11 points, and you'll see so does Excel. Works the same way. At any point, I can change these fonts to say, what was the one everybody hates? Comic Sans. Like that. I can make them bold. So bold, italics, underline work the same way here as they do in Microsoft Word. In fact, I can turn off the bold on the dates, stretch them out a little more, and there we go. So it just kind of depends. When you're doing a table in Word, you could easily switch over to Excel, select this table, copy it, paste it over into Word. Some people prefer using Excel. Some people prefer just staying in Word and doing it. Again, it doesn't matter. What will matter later on is when you have some formulas in, some numbers, as you move them from one type of program to the other, it can make a difference. All right, so I mentioned that we have worksheets and workbooks. So right now we're working on sheet number 1. That's this right here. I'm going to double click sheet number 1 because I want to give it a new name. I'm going to say, this is my months of the year. So I double click on the word sheet 1 and I click OK, and you'll see now it changes to months of the year. So this is my worksheet, right? I only have one, but I do have this little plus. So if I click plus, I get another sheet. Now it looks like all my months have disappeared. They really haven't, because down below here, they're on a different sheet. It's actually, it doesn't show in Microsoft 365, but in other versions, it'll look like a tab. I like that. Looks like a tab of your folders. And I think that's better because it just makes it clearer. So I click on months of the year, there's my months. I'm going to click on sheet 1. And this time, instead of going across the top, I'm going to go vertically. And I want to put in the days of the week. So on sheet 1, I type in days of the week. Now, as far as names down here, the computer doesn't care what they're called. It's for our benefits as human beings to remember what's on this tab in this sheet and what's on this worksheet. All right, so I'm going to go down, start off Monday, Tuesday. I was going to type them all in here, but there's a way in Microsoft Excel that it can figure out what you're doing and do a lot of work for you. What you have to do is establish a pattern. So I did. Here's 2 days of the week. I'm going to select them both. So you'll see I've got A1 through A2 selected because I have a dark square around it. And then I don't know if you can see it, but there's a little dark square here. That's called a fill handle. That's a great thing because rather than having to type out all the days of the week, I can grab that fill handle, and I grab it by hovering over it. I'll see a little black plus, tells me I got it, got my target. I click and hold it and drag it down to 7, because there's 7 days of the week, right? Let go, and look what happened. Excel said, oh, I see what you're doing. Monday, Tuesday, I get it. So the next one will be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So you can do that as long as you have patterns, right? If I just had something, I'm gonna go to C1 here. And I just had the word Valentine's Day. No pattern. I can fill handle it, but what it will do is just copy the same word over and over and over again, right? And that goes for numbers too. So I'm gonna undo that. I'll put in 1, and let's see. I'll do 3. So we'll do odd numbers. So I select those two, fill handle them down. Let's see what it did. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. So any pattern that you put in there, could be days of the week, calendar years. So let's go this way. And that fill handle will keep going and following your pattern for every cell. That saves a lot of typing. And if I had to figure out all the odd numbers, I could get the first few down, but then after a while, I'd probably do a typo if I had to do a whole lot of them. So you can do that here. If you're counting by 4s too, it would do the same thing. So any kind of pattern, okay? When I type in the word Monday, or the computer fill handles in the word Sunday, it's exactly the same once I release it. In other words, the computer couldn't tell you if I did this or if it did this. Same with the numbers. As you'll see, I look up here, and they are exactly the same as if I typed them. And the years too. So we're going to use that fill handle a lot. The only drawback I find with a fill handle is it's a little hard to get to sometimes. So whenever you see the 4 arrows, the 4 white arrows, that indicates you want to move it. So if I click that and drag it over to column B, see it slid it over. So 4 arrows moves. If you just see the plus, the white plus, like I have here, it's telling you that it's not ready to do any kind of activities. It's basically selecting. It's only when you see the little black plus. And the problem, the way they design this, is the black plus turns into a plus right when it's overlapping the corner of my selection. So it's kind of hard to see. But once you get used to it, like I say, once it works great. The other thing too is, let's say I was doing every day of the week for an entire year. So now I've got a pattern of 7 days. I can use my fill handle to go down, go as far as I want, and it still just repeats the pattern. I said, okay, so you went from Sunday, that means we're gonna start at Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, all the way down. So like I said before, that fill handle, it really is an Excel blessing. The Microsoft Excel worksheets emulate what people used to do by hand. And they actually kept spreadsheets on these big grids. And they used to be in these huge workbooks. When I worked for the County Office of Education, there was one person there. She was really good at spreadsheets, the physical manual spreadsheets. And if I had something at variance in the budget, I'd say, hey, Jean, how come this month we spent this, and what happened here? She'd pull out this big book, plop it down, go through, and she had a mechanical pencil and the neatest, smallest writing I've ever seen. and she could go down and find exactly what was wrong. And she was good with that. But it took her years and years to learn that. So one day they assigned me to teach her Excel, and she was reluctant. I said, "Oh, Jean, but you're so good with these things. Why are you worried about it?" She says, "Oh, all this computer stuff, it makes it so hard." And I said, "Well, it's supposed to make it easier." But she'd done it for so long, to her, learning the computer, it's basically starting over again. And it was a lot harder. I thought what she did was a lot harder because she basically had to remember lots of different things, where to look for things. Whereas in Excel, there is a find feature, just like we saw in Word, you could do a find. It will find, replace, and work a lot, just like Microsoft Word. So anyway, she did, I told her to learn it, so she did. But as soon as they had a budget crunch, they offered her early retirement. So with a golden parachute. So she took it because she didn't want to have to deal with the computers. And besides, it was really good money. So they did, and she retired. And then they hired her back as a consultant at double her rate to teach her replacement to do what she did. But her replacement did it on the computer on Excel. So anyway, let's go back to the months of the year tab here. So now we have two worksheets in our workbook. It is 6:53, it's break time. When we come back from break, I'm going to ask you a math question. Here's what you have to come up with the answer with. I'm going to give you a choice. I'm a rich, eccentric billionaire, and I am going to give you a choice between $1 million cash up front today, or I will give you a penny on the first day of the month. Then the next day, I will double the previous amount. So in other words, the first day you get 1 cent. The second day, I'll double that to 2 cents. The third day, I'll double the last day from 2 cents to 4 cents. I'll keep doubling it for 1 month. Which would you take? The million straight up or the penny doubled every day? So I'll keep you in suspense for 10 minutes. It's right now 6:54. So we'll come back at 7:04. And we'll have Excel figure it out for us. All right, we're back. So have you decided which you would take? Let's figure it out. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a new worksheet in my workbook. So as I mentioned, I can just click the little plus down here. And it created a new one. It moved it to the left of my days of the week. It says sheet 1. And double click on it. I'm going to call it my penny puzzle. All right. So the first thing I want to do is I want to put in the days of the month. So you might say, well, look, they're right here. You got all these numbers. These, though, are row references. They're not actual numbers. And normally, if you were to print this, they wouldn't show up. So you have to kind of put in your own set of numbers. So I'm going to put a label here by calling it day of the month. All right. In doing so, I can see that it is too wide for my column, as my column exists. See, this of the month is too big. So I'm going to stretch it out by clicking between the A and the B, and I'll see my 2 double black arrows, and stretch out till it goes past the word month. There we go. When I click on cell A1, it says day of the month. This is a label, meaning it's text, and it's for us to know what the column of numbers below means. However, for Excel, it's also something that works a lot differently than numbers. So remember when I started, I had something in cell A1, 7 in cell A2, and I put a formula equal sign A1 plus A2. Well, now look what happens. See, it gives me an error. Whenever you see the hashtag here, it's not a hashtag in Excel. It's a way to signify that there's an error, and it says value, exclamation point, meaning it doesn't know how much day of the month is. Is it a 0? Is it a 1? Is it a billion? It has no idea. So you can't add text and numbers together. So if you ever see that, you'll get that error value. And it has a little triangle in the upper left-hand corner. And that's so when you're looking at a big spreadsheet, these will really stand out. So you can't miss them if there's an error. This, by the way, can also happen when, let's say I fix it and I say, okay, that's supposed to be a 5. And there you go, now it's fixed. But let's say I want to put in a 0. Oops, I used a capital O instead of a 0. And the computer says, I don't know what a capital O is worth. I don't know that's supposed to be 0. So you can see, okay, I'll fix it with a regular 0. So you can tell there's a slight difference between a capital O and the 0, depending on what font you're using. However, whenever you see that error, it means that you're trying to add numbers and letters together. So I'm going to undo till I get back my label here, and I'll just wipe these out because I don't care for them. All right, so I'm going to put in a pattern, 1, 2. I could keep going and typing all 30. We're going to do 30 days of a month. But like I said, we got that fill handle. I'm going to grab and drag down, and I'm going to get to row 15. And now I got a problem. I can't see where I'm going. What I can do is try to scroll down, but sometimes what happens is I'll scroll down and keep going, and then it overshoots. Again, as long as you don't let go of the mouse while you're dragging down, it's okay if it overshoots because I can bring it back up here to 31. So it's 30 days plus my label, right? So that's what I was aiming for. And there we go. There's all 30 days. Here's another technique. So I've got my pattern. I can go down to 15 and let go. Okay, so now I've got up to 14. Scroll down till I can just see 13 and 14. I can select these two, fill handle them down further, and then I'm not rolling off the page. And I'm just fill handling in sections. There's our 30. Okay, so that works too. Either way, you're still just getting the same numbers. It just takes a couple more clicks to do that. But that's kind of handy if you're worried about overshooting your target. Now, like in Microsoft Word, we can use centering. And if you remember in our table, centering in a cell centers in that cell. In other words, it's not going to center it across the page. So I want to make everything in this column centered. To select the entire column, I'm going to click on the letter A at the top here. So I click on A, and you'll see it's all selected as I scroll down, even beyond where I put numbers. It just means the entire column. And then up in my toolbar here on the home ribbon, I've got this little drop-down arrow with a stack of lines, and that's the alignment. And I want to do the center alignment. So I've got left align, center align, and align right, just like before. I click the center, and there it goes. Now they're all centered like that. Okay, in column B, I'll widen this a little further so we get a little bit more space. There we go. In column B, I want to do the math. So I'm going to call this amount earned. Again, the label is too wide for that column, so that's okay. I'm going to stretch it out by clicking between the B and the C, and here we go. There is another trick to this. I'm going to undo. If I wanted to stretch out in column B to the widest entry in column B, I can double click between the B and the C if you're using the desktop or laptop version, and it will automatically stretch it out. Just be warned, in this case, it would work fine. See? If though I had more stuff down here and I didn't realize there was something that was even longer, it would stretch it way too far out. I go, oops. You know, just double clicking means anything in this column that's the widest entry, it's going to adjust it to. But in our case, not a problem. So I'm going to double click between the B and the C, or drag it out. And again, either way gets you to the same spot. All right. So now I'm going to put in, on day one, I said I would give you 1 penny. So 1 penny is 1 cent, 0.01. That's 1 cent. Now you notice it says 0.01. Okay. This is going to be money, right? So column B, I want to change the format of my numbers. In my home ribbon, you'll see this toolbar. It says right now it's using general numbers. Okay, if I use the drop-down list here, I can see a whole bunch of different numbers. So for example, my number could be a date. So it might be a short date, a long date. It could be a percentage. In this case, it's going to be currency. So I click that. Now you'll see it's $1. $sign 0.01. Okay, so that's 1 cent. Underneath it, I want to double the number from before. So what's my penny in? My penny is in cell B2. When I click on it, I can see in the upper left-hand corner, B2. I can also see here B2. Yep, all good. So in cell B3, where I want it to appear, I'm going to put the equal sign. And I'm going to type in B2. And again, I don't have to put uppercase. You can, but you don't have to. And then I want to tell it times 2. Well, here's the thing with Excel. You can't use the X for times. You have to use the asterisk. The asterisk is Shift 8, like that, a star. Some people call it the star. So X means the letter X, star means times. I'm going to do times 2. Sure enough, there we go. 1 cent times 2 is 2 cents. When I click on cell B2, you'll see in the cell itself, it gives me the calculated dollar amount, 2 cents. But in the formula bar, it tells me why it's saying 2 cents. In other words, it gives me the formula. See the difference? In cell A2, it didn't matter. They're both the same. They're both 1 cent. Although up here, it doesn't show it as formatted. Oops. But in cell B2, it's formatted. Now we start getting the formulas where, here we go, B2 times 2 makes up the formula. All right. Underneath it, cell B4, I want to do the same thing. In this case, I can do equal sign. I'll turn on my caps lock this time. B3 times 2. Or because of the way the multiplication works, I could also do 2 times B3. And it's still going to work. Double 2 is 4, and sure enough, there it is. And when I click on it, it gives me the formula at the top and the result in B4. All right, so after 3 days, you got 4 cents. That $1 million was looking a lot better. Maybe this was not a good idea. So if you picked doubling the penny, you might be a little discouraged by now. All right, I'm gonna go down below it and try one more, equal sign B4. See when I type it? Now here's another way to do this. I can push the equal sign on my keyboard, and then I can click on the cell I want to double. So in this case, cell B4. See how I get the marching ants and the blue, and it gives me a blue B4 in my formula bar. All right. And then I'm going to put times the star 2. So that's another way you can select cells and formulas, is just by clicking on them. That's really handy, especially if you're doing a complicated formula, because then you can see them and they're color coded. And that helps too. All right. So 8 cents. Well, rather than typing this formula 30 times, as you might imagine, that fill handle can be used. I said before, if we're doing a pattern, it would follow a pattern, or in this case, because the way we've designed this formula is we're saying, take the cell above and multiply it by 2. So if you look here, this cell B3, take the cell above, multiply by 2. Take the cell above, multiply by 2. So what I can do is I can use this fill handle by clicking on that little black square, dragging it down. I'm just going to go down to the 7th day. And you see how that worked? It went from 8 to 16 to 32 to 64 cents. All right, how many months in a week? Or months in a week? How many weeks in a month? About 4. So we're on the first week here, and you only earn 64 cents. So again, that $1 million, I don't know, should have taken the million. Well, let's try the next week. So this time I'm going to click on the 64 cents, which up here tells me it's B7 times 2. That's good. That's the right formula. And I'm going to fill handle that down to the 14th. You'll notice as I'm fill handling, I accidentally went too far to the right and it tried to bounce over. If you don't let go and just come back and start moving, the computer figures it out. All right, week 2. Well, you're up in the dollars, $81.92 by week 2, but the month's half over, and now you're comparing $81.92 to $1 million. Now, once again, that $1 million probably was the right choice, or at least it looks like it. The other way you can do you can move the formula is you can copy and paste. So I'm going to click on cell B14, and I'm going to click copy, Control C, and you'll see I get my marching ants walking around this cell. As I go down, I want to click on cell B16, which is the 15th day of the month, and go down to the 21st. So see, I've selected down below here 7 days. Now with that marching ant still walking around, I'm going to paste. And here it comes. So you look at day 15, sure enough, it took the cell before B15 times 2. Next, B16 times 2. Okay, so now we're up to $300. B18 is taking cell B17 multiplying by 2. And now, finally, we're talking some money. On day 18, you're multiplying $655.36 by 2. It gives you $1,300. That's pretty good. The next day, 2,000. The next day, 5,000. And by the end of the third week, you're up to $10,485.76. So see how that copy and paste works as well? And you can do it either way, and they're equally as legitimate. It's just your own personal preference. Now you'll see I've still got marching ants around cell B15. If I want to stop, I hit the escape key on the keyboard. That's the upper left-hand key on the keyboard. And it looks like ESC. So that escape key will stop anything that's active. And that can be really handy because sometimes, you're not sure what happened, but something's activated. You might see marching ants. You say, well, I don't want marching ants. I don't know what that is. Hit escape and it will undo it. So that's what I'm going to do. It removes the marching ants, or if you're editing something, it'll take you out of editing. So I hit the escape key and it's gone. It can also happen if I'm in the middle of typing something, like right now I'm in cell B22, and now I say, my number's gone. Whoops, what happened? Well, I've clicked up here in the formula bar. So now Excel thinks I'm about to type something else. Maybe I'm going to cheat. And I want to type next to this B2 times 2 times 1,000. And I want to do that. Or if I just accidentally click on it, and I might not be sure what I did, and I want to just go back to the way it was before, again, hit the escape key, takes you right back out and puts it the way it was. So it's kind of like stop the change, go back to where we were. All right, so let's see how we're doing with our money. We're at $10,000. Well, that's a nice sum, but still compared to $1 million, that's not very much. Let's handle this down by 1. So we double the 10,000 to 20,000. Pretty good. Go down to the 23rd day, 41,000. 24th day of the month, 83,000. Do it again. Fill handle down 25th day, 167,000. Now I didn't mention which month I was going to do this in. What if it were February? Well, February, 28 days, right? Unless it's leap year. You only have 1, 2, 3 more days to try to make that million. It's going to work? Well, let's find out. So you're at 167,000. On the 26th, we double that. 335. Double it again on the 27th. Now we're getting close. 671,000, but there's only 1 day left. Can we make $1 million? Ta-da! If you take the choice of doubling a penny every day for every day in February, 28 days, you're still coming out ahead over the $1 million. We're now up to $1,342,177.28, right? So even in February, the better deal is take the penny. Might seem counterintuitive. And if you look at our list here, as it's doubling, it looks like a long time, like, yeah, that was a bad decision. But right at the end, it shows up. That's, by the way, the magic of compound interest. So if you ever do investing or if you ever put money in the bank, it will tell you or allow you to accumulate a lot. It just takes time. It takes time to keep adding and adding and adding. Also, by the way, this is how credit cards work for the credit card companies. That's why they tell you, oh yeah, you can keep a balance, but you only have to pay $10. Well, sure, because they want to charge you interest on everything else. And next month, they charge you interest on everything else plus the interest you accumulated last month. And so it really works on their end. So they've turned this around so that you're paying them. All right. So that's February. What if it were a 30-day month? Well, I'm going to fill handle this down. 2 more. Oh, yeah. There you go. 30 days. If it were a 30-day month, $5,368,709.12. Definitely take the penny. Now, it might happen to be a month that has 31 days. So let's see what that would do. So I'm just going to add a 31. I can fill handle it down, or I'm just going to type it. Sometimes it's easier to type. So there's day 31. I'm going to fill handle this down and double it. On a 31-day month, 1 penny doubled every day would give you a total of $10,737,000, or $737,000, $418.24. So that's by far 10 times, over 10 times the $1 million I gave you as an alternative. Okay. So if you know any kids, you can play that trick on them, not trick, but play the game with them and show them which would you take. And everybody wants to take the million, but you don't realize how that doubles. And really, you notice the doubling only takes effect right at the end. All right. So there we go. Print this out, put it on your refrigerator, and amaze the family. Now, what if I, instead of giving you 1 cent, wanted to give you 5 cents and double it, just to try to make it sound more attractive? Let's go to cell B2. That's where you got your first penny, right? So this is what I said earlier. One of the advantages to Excel is kind of like what ifs. What if instead of 1 cent, we started at 5 cents? I'm going to type in 0.05. Watch what happens. See the number down below it, doubled to 10, then to 20, and then to 40. And all the numbers were updated because they're all reliant on the number that comes before. And finally, on this first number here in cell B2. Let's take a look at the bottom. Oh, $53 million on a 31-month day. What if instead of a penny, I started at $1? Let's type in the $1. And again, not looking too good for the first 2 weeks. It's still only 8,000. But then we get to the bottom, you'll see it is so large, it can't fit in my column. How do I know that? Look what it did here. You'll see these, they call them hashtags. I call them pound signs. Whatever you call them, they can also be called number signs. What it's telling you is there's a number in that cell. So when I click on it, I can see the formula. That's right, nothing wrong with the formula. But in cell B32, the number is so big, it can't show it. It ran out of room. So here's a rule in Excel. If it can't show everything, it shows nothing. It shows these pound signs. And the reason is, let's pick a number here. So I've got here, let's go to cell B16. B16 says this is $16,384, right? Well, what if you couldn't see, well, let's see, I'll make it darker. I want to blot out, there we go. Oh, the part to the right. Look, it's the same number. The number hasn't changed, but it looks like $16. Well, there's a huge difference between $16 and $16,384. So that's the problem. If it cut off the numbers in a column, then it would be very misleading. So what it does, it says, I'm not going to mislead you. So instead, I'll just show this. And this is an indicator. Okay, I just need to widen my column. So no problem. We know how to do that. I can click, drag it out, and try widening it till it finally shows up. Okay, had we started with $1 and a 31-day month, you would have received $1,073,741,824. So see how that works? Okay, so That's how you work with those pound signs. Whenever you see them, it's just nothing wrong with your formula. It just can't show it all. So just widen it up and it will show it all. Susan has enough room. And by the way, I'm just going to do it on purpose to a lot of the number. See, we only had enough room for 64, and then anything that's higher than that. And the other thing too can be the number itself. Like $11 will show up, but 99 might not, because you're just on the edge and the nines are wider than the ones. And see all these pound signs? So again, there's nothing wrong with them. The numbers are all right. It's just not able to see them. I can go far enough, so I go further. The other way you can do this is you take it way far out, far enough that you know I don't have to go this far, but that's all right. Then once I see the numbers, then I can bring it back in and get a better feel for it. So it just kind of depends on how wide you want to make it. Okay, see, $1 is way too generous. So let's go back to 1 penny. I can put the penny in. And by the way, the other way to do it is I could have done undo. So if I do undo, 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 it'll take me all the way back to the 1 penny again. And here's the amount. Now I'll tell you from experience, if you play this game with kids, kids can sometimes be little lawyers, especially when it comes to money. They said, well, you said you were going to give me 1 penny, but on day 2, you said you'd double it, but you never said you're taking back the original penny. And on day 3, you didn't say you're going to take back the 2 cents. So how much would I get if I got to keep each day's earning total? In other words, tally them up. Smart kid, right? Let's find out. So I'm going to skip a cell here just to keep the numbers separate, because I know it's going to be big. And I want to add them up. There's a couple of ways to do it. So we started off with our penny here in B2. There's B3, B4. What I could do in cell B34 down here, I could put the equal sign and I could say, all right, computer, take B2 plus B3 plus B4 plus B5 all the way down to B32. I could do that. Now I just did the first 4 and it gave me 15 cents. So you can do that. You can enter them individually. Sometimes you want just certain cells to be included and other cells not to be included. In that case, it is a good idea to put them in manually. However, because we're going to tally up all of these numbers into one big lump sum, you heard the word sum, does it sound familiar? We actually have a formula to do that. I told you before, it's the most common formula in Excel. In fact, it's so common, it has its own button. See this E? It's not really an E, it's a Greek letter sigma. Sigma in math means sum it up. So what I can do is I'm in cell B34, I can click this E and watch what happens. See, it puts in the word, or first the equal sign, of course, right? Because it knows you have to have an equal sign for a formula. And then it's using the formula sum. And then in the left parentheses, it's put B2 colon B33. Whenever you see that colon, that means through. So what it's basically saying is start at B2 and go through B33. Now, in this case, B33 is empty. So I might want to adjust that to B32 just to be clean, but it won't matter because B33 is blank. When I do that, you'll see my numbers are in blue now, B2 to B32, and the numbers above match the blue. And you'll see it looped around the nearest stack of numbers. Sum is used so often that Excel's pretty smart about it. It's not always right, but it'll take a guess. If it's wrong, you can adjust it. You can adjust it now just by, like I did, by manually changing the numbers. Or even here, you'll see you've got these handles. You know, I could pull it up to only do through 28 and exclude cell B30, B31, B32. So you can adjust it this way too. And if you remember the format, you can just type it in by hand. You can type in equal sign sum, left parenthesis, B2 colon B32, close parentheses. So either way, I'm gonna hit enter. And here's my number, all right? So for the kids who wanted to keep their pennies every day, they would earn 21,474,836.47 on a 31-day month. What if it were February? Say, man, this is really costing me. I'm going to cut it back some. I'm going to say, yes, it's only February I'm going to do. So February we know is right here, the 20th day. And that happens to be cell B29. In my formula, I'm going to click my formula bar up here at the top. And I can just backspace. And what did I say? B29, right, close parenthesis. And I can verify here that, yeah, that's right. That's the one I want. And I hit enter. So my total would be 2,684,354. That's in 28 days. I get to keep every day's proceeds going forward. When I look down here, I can tell it's only going to go to cell B29 because B29 is the last number. Up here, I can't tell. So you know, if you're going to print this out, this wouldn't make a lot of sense unless you say, like to here. I'm going to put a label. Total at 28 days. Oops. Let's try again. I'll do it up here. Like the caps lock on. Like that. So you put a label there to let everybody know what it means. Okay, I'm going to change it back to B32. So this time, rather than deleting everything, I'm just going to go in and surgically pull out that 29 and type in 32. So that's another way to edit the formulas. As long as the formulas make sense, this will work. And I'll put a label here, and I'll call this a grand total. There is one other rule that when you're using sums that you're going to have to watch out for, and that is you can't add the sum itself into the set of numbers. Meaning, my sum total here is at cell B34. I can see that right there, right? What if in my formula I said, okay, add up B34 all the way through B34, including B34. And so in other words, I change this to a 4, watch what happens. See how I got it, made it 0? It goofed up. So that's an error. And I'll tell you, back in the old days in Excel, when they came out with like the first version, this used to lock up the whole computer. And the reason was the computer was actually trying to calculate how much it would be to add up all those numbers plus what's in B34. Well, that changes everything because now it has to include the grand total. All right, so it includes the grand total. Well, that changed the total amount, and it would go into a loop and lock itself up. So you can never add itself in the sum formula. You get a crazy number like this. It's going to blank out. So I'm going to undo and bring it back. Luckily, there are no errors in Excel anymore that should lock up the computer and cause it to crash. But that's the way it used to be. Okay, so that was my overall grand total. As you scroll up to the top here, you can see how far the numbers grow. I'm going to click on row 1. Row 1 is my labels, and it's very common that row 1 includes labels because that's telling anybody who's looking at this, what are you looking at? Well, I'm looking at day of the month and amount earned. We can format these just like we formatted Microsoft Word words. In this case, I'm going to make them bold and I'm going to make them centered. So I'm going to click on the B. And then I'm going to go over here and make them centered. like that. Yeah, so on the words amount earned, there's a little gap on each side. And there we go. By the way, while I select the entire row, I can do Control B for bold, turn it off and on that way. And that means anything I type in row 1 now will be centered and bold. Like even the word bold. See how it's bold and it comes out from the center? So by selecting the entire row, it's like earlier when we were formatting the dollar amount, we selected the entire column. You can do the entire row. You don't have to, but like I said, because it's so common that there's going to be more titles over here or something, a lot of times you just figure out, just do the whole row. I could also have done just those 2 cells by selecting them. And in this case, I want to increase the font to 14 points. Okay, what happened was now it's too big. And you might say, well, wait a minute, you said Excel wouldn't show anything if it couldn't fit it all in there. Well, that's only true in numbers. In words, see, Excel, it's not that right-brained. It doesn't really care. So it says, I don't care what you do with your words. And it allows them to be overlapped. Well, again, that's no problem. Just stretch them out. And you'll notice they're still 2 together. And I can stretch them out like that. So a lot of the formatting controls are very similar to Word. And when it comes to these labels, like I said, that's for us humans. Excel, not too worried about what you put in the labels. And then down below, I want to increase that to 14 points as well and make it bold. So that gives you the grand total too. Let's say I wanted to emphasize that this could have just gone 28 days, it could have gone 30 days, and it could have gone 31 days. Right now, they're all bunched together. I want to insert a blank row between 28 day and 29. So I'm going to click on row 30 underneath the 28. Then I have a new ribbon up here. It says insert. So what you can do is you can insert columns, you can also insert rows, and you can insert cells. I'm going to use the keyboard or the mouse shortcut on row 30. I'm going to right click and get a short window. This allows you to jump into things quickly. So you can insert row. See how it did it? Now, you notice it didn't change the math. What it did, it changed that B32 to a 33 because the computer said, okay, I get what you're doing. You're putting in a blank row. Well, I'm going to include it in my column here. So when I click next to the sum function, you see it included that row. All right. I want to do the same thing after 30. So you always have to select the row below where you want the blank one to show up. Again, I'm going to right click on 33 on my mouse and insert row. All right, so that kind of shows you 28 days versus 30 days versus 31 days versus the grand total of adding everything together. So you can easily insert columns and rows, and the good news is it doesn't mess up your formulas, mostly. There are certain conditions where that can happen. Usually that's pretty advanced though when you have to start worrying about that. There are times when you're working with these things that you have to be careful about putting things that don't look like things, but are things. Perfect example is the space bar. So I'm here in cell B33, right between the 5 million and the 10 million. And let's say I accidentally type something. Oops, typo. Okay. To get rid of it, a lot of times what people do is say, oh, I want to get rid of that. I'll hit the space. And they hit enter. If I look in cell B33, it looks like it's empty. How can I tell there's something there? If I click on the formula bar and I try to select it, there is a space there. See the space? Here's the thing. The space is something. And later on, when you get into some more advanced formulas, spaces will be counted. Well, it's empty. I really don't want to count it. So never use a space bar to remove things. If you have to get rid of something, use the delete key. So that's one of those words in Excel, or one of those things in Excel that doesn't happen in Word. In Word, you can use the space bar. You probably shouldn't do it there either, but it won't really make a difference most of the time. It'll just be a blank space. In this case, a blank space is something, and it doesn't count as nothing. So just use delete to clean these out if you need to for some reason. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the top here. And I'm gonna start off with $5. What would have been with $5? And you'll notice that even though I've made those changes, the computer has adapted the formulas. And so that's gonna be some outrageous amount as I scroll down. Yeah. But you see, it still did the right calculations. So having those extra columns doesn't change anything. It's, they're only spacing and the computer's adapted. So I'm going to undo. So any questions on that formatting and how that works? Okay, there is one other little note here. You'll notice next to my 1 cent, I have the dollar sign. So we did this because we switched to the currency format. In Excel, there are two types of money formats. There's currency, and if I use my pick list here, you'll see there's accounting. I'm gonna click on, first I wanna click on column B, and I'm gonna change column B to accounting, and you'll see the difference. You've still got a dollar sign, but it's all the way to the left of the column. And as I scroll down, even at my 21 million, it's still closer to the number, but it's still crunched over to the left. It's supposed to be easier to read because you don't have all the dollar signs next to it. So if I undo, that's currency. See that the dollar signs are next to everything. And just even at first glance here, what's a good number? Okay, like the 655.36 at cell B18. It looks like that dollar sign might almost be a 6. If I'm looking at it from distance, it just gives you an impression like, well, that could be is it 66? No, it's 655. But if you got this set to accounting, you don't have that problem. So again, as you'll see, the computer doesn't care. The numbers don't change at all. It's just the formatting. So as far as the Excel is concerned, you can use any way you like. I'm going to go ahead and leave it accounting because I like that better. And then the one other thing I want to do is I've got my penny puzzle. Well, that's got the best calculations here in my first workbook. I want that to be at the very far left. In other words, I want the tab to be the first one. So what I'm going to do is see where I've named it penny puzzle at the bottom. I'm going to slide that over. To move and shuffle your worksheets within the workbook, you just click on, in this case, penny puzzle, click and hold, drag to the left, and it should bounce over. There we go. So now it's my first workbook, pardon me, my first worksheet in my workbook. And then we got the months and the days of the week. When you're working on worksheets, it really doesn't matter what order they appear down here as far as next time you open it. So if I close my worksheet right now, as is, when I open it again, I will see, it'll start up here, day of the month, and show me exactly as I'm seeing now. On the other hand, if I click on months of the year, let's say I'm working on this, and I close it, next time I open it, this is where it's going to show up, even though it's not the first worksheet. And same with days of the week. The reason that's important, is it's really handy because, like I said, you could have a worksheet here for every month of the year for the last 5 years. And the one you really care about is January 2022. Well, it's way at the end. It would be a real pain to always have to go from the beginning when it opens and scroll over to find January 2022. So the computer remembers where you leave off when you close it. So I want it to be at the penny puzzle. I'm gonna leave it there. And you can click on any cell you like, it doesn't matter. That's where it will open. And I'm gonna close it. Any questions with Microsoft Excel? So now do you feel prepared if anybody ever asks you a choice between $1 million or a penny a day? See, it works. I told you this works great with kids. I don't know about the adults you know, but all the adults I know are all too suspicious. I was like, wait a minute, you're going to give me $1 million. So no matter what, I'm going to get something, right? Why would you give me anything? You know, they start asking that, like it gets really suspicious. Okay, there must be a catch. You know, what's going to happen? You're going to blackmail me the rest of my life. You're going to, you know, do something, want my firstborn. There's got to be something else. So, you know, that kind of loses the punch of the math game. But, you know, for kids, it's like, okay. And the other thing too is, I don't know about you, somebody asked something that sounds so outrageous, like the range between a penny and $1 million. You know, I want to say $1 million, I'll take the million. But on the other hand, you know, they wouldn't be asking unless there's a catch. And so you kind of already got a hint that maybe the penny is the right way because it's counterintuitive. But anyway, if it ever pops up, let me know how that works out for you and enjoy the millions that you earn by getting the right answer. So with that, we are done with our first lesson of Excel. Tomorrow, we're going to start learning some more formulas and start working them into our workbooks. So we're going to create new workbooks. And then after that, we'll be sending you links so we don't have to keep keying in all these numbers ourselves. And we'll just keep working on the formulas. So there's no questions. We're done for the night. Have a good evening, and we'll see you tomorrow.